Non-binary writer Masha Gessen suggests in the Ezra Klein show that we need better narratives about gender.
You're just a name-dropping parasite, aren't you? Let's start this monstrosity. So this is Carefree Wandering, how gender became a profile. What is gender identity after all, and why bother about it so much? This is Hans-Georg Muller. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm just going to assume Muller. Hans-Georg Muller is a professor at the Philosophy and Religious Studies Department at the University of Macau, and with Paul D'Ambrosio, author of the recently published You and Your Profile, Identity After Authenticity. Oh, man. I might have to review this book, but we'll see. Muller is his name, yeah. I might have to review this book. I might literally be using the donations for Excited from today to buy the book to get a hold of it if I can't get a hold of a PDF. It's going to age poorly because like the center of gravity is not actually towards repressing people more and more and more. It's actually in the other direction because you have more and more people who fall into that umbrella, who get into positions of influence, who don't want to be persecuted. This guy's very bad. He's a very bad philosopher, but here we go.
So, I've got a new book coming out. It's on gender.
Why identity is neither individual nor essential. Now, here's the thing. Gender is not individual, and gender is not essential. But why are we focusing on identity? Why is the title why identity is neither individual nor essential? And the reason why I'm calling it right now, the reason why is he's going to talk about how your identity is actually downstream from some kind of social intelligibility, which is true, but he's going to use that prescriptively. So rather than, for example, a more ameliorative approach from like I hate that the word gender critical has been taken over by transphobes. People who are critical of the essentiality of gender roles will still acknowledge, like Judith Butler does, Sally Haslanger does, so on and so forth, that people are still constituted by their societies as well. And so even though in a strict sense there are no men or women at all, people are brought up as things that interface with their environment in such a way as it becomes appropriate to say you are a man or a woman, or for people to ascribe man or woman to you. And this regardless of whether you're cis or trans or whatever. He's doing the Jordan Peterson thing. I guarantee you, where it's like, well, you have to approximate to the expectations of your culture. Presuming that culture is sort of a complete self-stable system, which is silly, because if it was, we wouldn't be here right now. But I digress. Let's let him cook.
When I wrote it 2 years ago, I suspected it wouldn't be easy.
Rixai tip $10. Hopefully this covers most of it if you do go for it.
I'm probably going to get a PDF, but thank you, Rixai. I do appreciate that.
To publish because the topic
It would cover it if I do, but I'd rather spend money on a good book.
was so politically sensitive in the West.
Listen to this. Listen to this guy. This is how you know it's going to be garbage.
I suspected it wouldn't be easy to publish because the topic was so politically sensitive in the West.
You could publish on gender 2 years ago. When he says too politically sensitive in the West, he ain't talking about it being, talking about it, because trans people are being persecuted. He's talking about he's going to be transphobic, and 2 years ago, it was a little bit more difficult to be openly so because you would be castigated by your colleagues. And now, because fascists worldwide have basically sidelined academic institutions, he can just appeal directly to them.
As it happened, publication of the manuscript was blocked, and I was asked to rewrite the book. In hindsight, I'm quite glad I did. Gender struggles have been an important part of Western identity politics, which are now slowly evaporating. These struggles have been about empowering individuals to freely express their gender identity.
No, they're not. These struggles have been primarily about giving people access to the conditions of life and freeing them from cultural relegation to a position of servitude or ostracization. It has nothing to do with freely expressing your identity. Most feminist stuff, actually, over the past 20 years, 25 or so years, has been deflationary of the reality of identities categorically, including cis identities. And the approach to other identities is largely ameliorative, as in, like, hey, we are constituted to be these kinds of things. And we aren't separate from ourselves. So, like, insofar as we are attempting to be kind to each other and to be respectful of each other, we don't pretend we are other things and we are so constituted, even if we think it would be preferable if people weren't constituted to be men or women, quote unquote, in the future. That's how you would do it.
And yet, despite all these efforts, it doesn't seem that people today...
This, by the way, is like a sure sign, dear God, is a sure sign that he hasn't actually read or kept up with the literature on gender. Actually, let me see if I can't find a copy of it right now. It's called The Enigma of Gender. I wonder if I can't get it legitimately off Amazon, of course, in PDF form. Not yet, but I'm sure it'll be up soon.
Have less gender problems than before. Actually, the opposite may be.
Having a brief glance at his book, You and Your Profile, Identity After Authenticity, Chapter 2 is about Butler. About authenticity, that's an interesting choice. There is no authenticity in Butler. But I will point out that even Thomas Bogardus refers to Butler very badly, because Butler is a meme. She's the Bible of transgenderism, don't you know, right? So we'll see.
Be the case. In his book, The Ancient...
Like, red flag number 2. Red flag number 2. You're taking anything Jonathan Haidt writes seriously.
Generation. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt discusses waves of mental illness and suicide among Western teenagers, along with the rise of social media. Since these serious problems especially affect girls, and since they occurred at the same time with the sudden rise of transgender, which is often associated...
The sudden rise of transgender.
...with psychological problems as well.
Like, there's just, like, it's over and over again, just demonstrating, like, a lack of conversance with even the lingo, the language, right? The rise of transgender. It's not the rise of transgender. It's the rise of critical attitudes towards gender and acceptance of trans people. It's not the rise of transgender, like transgender is a faction. Like, what? I don't think it is released until later this month. Well, that would explain it. So if it's out later this month, I will... Hey, if I cannot get a digital copy of it, I will order a physical copy and I will review it that week. I don't think it will be difficult. If it's later this month, that'll be great, because I can... although somebody just said that you had a brief glance of it. Oh, his previous book. You and Your Profile, Identity After Authenticity, Chapter 2 is about Butler. I should look at that one then, in the meantime, while I'm waiting. Because I'm doing a review as well of Bogardus' book, which is astonishingly bad. But fortunately, it's largely a recapitulation of his previous papers. There's not a whole ton of new stuff there to deal with. Except you think squids are gross. It's like, imagine being like a theist philosopher, quote unquote. And you open your book with, I was watching like like squids mating in the ocean once, and it disgusted me. And it's like, you hate the stuff you think God created, and you're going to use this as the intro to what? Like, I'm sorry, it's like, yeah, he may be protesting a bit too much envy.
I suspect the generational rise in anxiety has not only to do with social media,
Okay,
but also with gender.
all right, Hans. All right, Hans. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. Where are you going with this?
Arguably, young people worry even more about gender now than before. Why is that? I believe there's a philosophical aspect to this. Non-binary writer Masha Gessen suggests in the Ezra Klein show that we need better narratives about gender.
You're just a name-dropping parasite, aren't you? Just like, hey, I'm not taking seriously at academia. Please, Jonathan Haidt, Ezra Klein, invite me, please.
In order to get to better narratives about gender, we need to question the ones we currently have.
Like the ones where your identity is determined by the organs you're observed to have in a certain ratio by a doctor at birth, and your job opportunities and your proper life role, and whether or not you should be like arranging your life around reproduction, that stuff. Or are you going to talk about how we should have more restrictive rules for when we consider someone to actually be a transgender? That's going to be the angle? That's going to be the angle.
Philosophically, the problem may be that we see gender as an essential core of our identity.
Okay. We're going to catch up to Butler. We're going to undermine Butler.
And that in this way, it can easily become an obsession to get one's gender right.
We're undermining Butler. That's what we're doing. We're not like actually undermining Butler. Butler's smarter than this person. We're going with people care about gender too much. The trans people, they need to chill out. That's going to be it.
Gessen locates the problem right there, that we regard gender issues as...
So if they're so important, if they're so central to our identities...
And concludes...
Well, I think the problem is that we just assign such disproportionate importance to both sexuality and gender.
No, we don't. Assign disproportionate importance. The entire premise that you will see this talked about constantly, by the way. There's a reason why family structure and gender identity are so central to conservative politics and rhetoric. The idea that the family is the foundation of the state directly implicates gender roles in the constitution of your entire society. Your entire society. Like,
I think
it's literally everything.
Hits the nail on the head. My new book is titled The Enigma of Gender, and it's about the impossibility to get one's gender right.
Okay, but is that because you're deflating the idea of rightness?
Nevertheless, insisting on getting it right can become pathological.
Oh, okay. So it's literally just a screed against offering people like transition therapies. That's literally it. That's it.
Existentially and politically. The book argues for something like gender ease rather than Judith Butler's famous gender trouble.
That is the dumbest way. Wow. Oh, I'm glad I watched this. This is going to be...
For being at ease with one's gender, it's helpful to understand the gender identity.
For being at ease with one's gender. Being at ease with one's gender. You don't have a gender in Butler. That's the first thing Butler talks about. You do not have a gender. Gendering is how you are constituted socially. You don't possess a gender. Butler repeats this ad nauseum in virtually every single thing they write after Gender Trouble, even before then. You did not read the book. You did not read the first 30 pages of the book.
Like identity in general, is genuinely pretended. And I'll get to that.
Oh, God! Oh, God, no!
At ease with one's gender, it's helpful to understand that gender identity, like identity in general, is genuinely pretended.
It's pretended. No, it's not. Wait, wasn't his point with that non-binary person that we take gender too seriously? Why would he advocate based on that for ease? Because he's a right-winger. He's trying to appeal to transphobes. That's literally all this is. That's all this is. Like, remember his first video was going after PhilosophyTube, and the angle he took was PhilosophyTube has a picture of herself in makeup on the cover. oh, this is just about prophelicity, not about philosophy. It's about her looking like a woman, and so on. That was the angle. That's who this guy is. It's embarrassing. There's a reason why you will never see this guy. And people, it astonishes me that this never like clicks with people. Have you noticed that these people never interact with other philosophers? They'd be eaten alive.
And I'll get to
A right-winger at a Chinese university, you can be a right-winger and pro-China. There's no contradiction there. None at all.
that. Identity is the human sense of self. It includes gender identity, a sense of self in terms of gender.
What does that even mean? What is a sense of self? You're just taking that on like no critical attitude towards that at all? What does that mean to have a sense of self, Hans? With what organ do you sense yourself? Explain. Epistemologically, what the hell is a sense of self? Are you talking about like bodily extension? Are you talking about the sense of like stuff you can manipulate? Are you talking about what you identify as being you or not you in sort of an abstract intellectualized sense? There are parts of your body you can't sense that are intrinsic to your actual running, which is creepy as hell, and I hate thinking about it. Ugh. But which one is it, Hans?
We are born with a biological sex.
No, you're not. What? That's not a given. What are you talking about? No, you're not. Read literally anybody who talks about this stuff. You're born with a biological sex? What does that mean? What does that refer to? What is the difference between sex and biological sex? Why are you specifying biological with sex? Because you're obviously appending more to that than just reproductive capacity. You're obviously attaching more to that than simply like external formations. There are intersex people who have the external formations of one class and the internal formations of another, or both combined. Are they born with a biological sex? They have reproductive capacity that relates to those organs, absolutely, because reproductive capacity requires certain organic structures. But that's not the same thing as saying that one has or is a sex. Having a capacity does not necessarily confer a strict social identity on the person as such. It requires a whole social matrix that interprets it in that way.
But not with a gendered sense of self.
Oh my God, man. Oh my God. Most children, he hasn't read 30 pages of Gender Trouble. He hasn't read the book. I've got my fireside chat done. I love this. I don't have to do any work. I can just go, look, this clown, he's writing a book on gender. He references Butler directly. He hasn't read 30 pages in which Butler says specifically, gender is not an identity. It's not a costume that you can wear. Sex, by the way, is also a gendering. Sex is gender, not in the sense that sex is downstream from identity, but literally, sex identities are constituted in the same way as every other gender category is. That's in the first 30 pages. And that's even ignoring the actual philosophical interest here. The entire notion even of the mind-body distinction is culturally downstream from a division of labor in which bodily needs are attended to by some members of society, slaves, and others who are not, men who aren't slaves. Women are in the first category. Boom. It's like, dude, 30 pages. You're a philosophy professor. That's how pathetic these people are. And it's also terrifying. It's one of the reasons also why, by the way, credentials, never, ever take what somebody says on faith because they have a credential. A credential means that you have established, in view of an institution, that you can be expected to adhere to certain standards. It should never like be involved in a discussion to the public. It's also one of the reasons why, whenever you go to a used bookstore, look at oh, I gotta calm down. I'm gonna make myself sick again. Look at the parapsychology section or the paranormal section, and look at the science section, and you'll notice something. The books by actual scientists will have the name of the author. The books by the kooks will have the name of the author and PhD, or MD, because frequently they'll be a chiropractor, right? Well, Sunday, what if he read Butler and simply thinks Butler is wrong? Then he has to say that, but I don't think he's going to. Oh, we got the cover. Is that the cover? No, it's not the cover. I don't think he's going to come back to Butler. I think he's just name dropping people. I think we've got a Naomi Wolf moment. He hasn't read Butler. He doesn't. Oh, we got ContraPoints. We got ContraPoints. This is just a desperate bid for relevancy.
It's not in the literal sense natural. We build a sense of self
What is the non-literal sense of natural, Hans?
and a sense of gender when we grow up.
No, you get a sense you were gendered from birth. What?
I argue that
You like when parents discover the sex of their baby in the womb, right? When a doctor tells them, "Hey, you're going to have a girl, you're going to have a boy." What do? They buy pink or blue pajamas and paint the bedroom pink or blue. They fill it with dolls or cats or with space or with knights or whatever based on that. They are gendering the thing before it is even a viable organism. Like,
to do this, we use certain identity technology.
just saying something that Butler disagrees with doesn't imply he didn't read Butler. It's not the point that he says something that Butler disagrees with. It's like if I said, let me give an example. It's like if I said, I'm too tired to think of an equivalent example, mostly because it would be extraordinarily bad. The first 30 pages of Gender Trouble goes into specifically how gender is a performance. What does Butler mean by that? Well, by a performance, Butler means that gender is something enacted. It's a process in concert and relation with other processes. Because for Butler, there is no self that transcends this performance because we are also composed of the same stuff as everything else in the world. So, therefore, we are quite literally the thing we are doing in concert with our society. And so what Butler is breaking down is the idea that sex and gender are sort of like two different levels of existence, where you have sex as the underlying natural thing, and then gender sort of overlaid on top, or emergent from it, sort of like a flame coming off of like burning fuel. Butler's point is that it is all the flame, right? So what Butler argues specifically is that sex, rather than being to gender as nature is to culture, rather sex categories are themselves actually an act of gendering. They are themselves, because when we're talking about gendering, we're not strictly speaking talking about something related to sex. That is itself, that association is a result of gendering too. We're talking specifically about categorizing. We're talking about classifying things as essential members of types based on whatever criteria, and then reifying that in our discourse and in our relations following from it. The fact that he is bringing this up in those specific terms and then simply asserting the sex-gender distinction in that way, as if sex is primary, gender is following from it, without addressing the fact that Butler is very specifically targeting that notion, means you didn't read it. The fact that he's talking about gender trouble as opposed to gender ease, it's like, when Butler's talking about gender trouble, Butler is not talking about people being anxious about gender. Butler is talking about the fact that the gendered categories are not stable. They result in friction between lived life and the categories and culture, and they result in problems. They result in illness, among other things. If they didn't, there would be no reason for Butler to write the book. So, like if gender categories worked, they wouldn't be trouble. The problem with what Carefree Wandering is doing is he's giving an erroneous account both of the contents of the book and of the language of the book, and then simply using the language wrong afterwards. He didn't read the book. Like, there's no way. It's actually impossible. We're doing a reading group in the server. William, if you're in the server, like, you're welcome to join and we can talk about this. I think they're actually midway through the first book right now. I'm going to talk about this in my next Fireside Chat video, I've decided, because this is one I can do fairly easily. He hasn't read the book. It's actually impossible. If he did read the book, then he's lying. Yeah, I was about to ask if the contrast of gender trouble and gender ease makes sense. And no, it doesn't at all. Gender ease in this context would be, let's pretend that these categories work and just go about our lives, and because we're conservatives, that would be the move, right?
Apologies. Paul D'Ambrosio and I call them sincerity, authenticity, and prophilicity. And to understand
Prophilicity is something he developed directly after going after Philosophy Tube for, putting her identity ahead on her YouTube channel. And it's like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who give Philosophy Tube the benefit of the doubt for doing really bad research and really bad philosophy because they take her to be a representative for trans people in media. But like, that is not the angle. First of all, Philosophy Tube is an actor and a YouTuber. Of course, she's going to be putting forward her appearance. That's her job. But secondly, to reduce trans people to, these are just weirdos who are obsessed with their appearances is really freaking gross, actually. And he very clearly has no, he just flatly has no conversance with the literature. He just has no conversance with it. This is just reactionary content.
gender identity and its problems, the enigma of gender looks into how these technologies shape gender identity. In many traditional societies, often still today.
Like, even the fact that he's talking about identity still, he's talking about gender in terms of it being a costume that one wears, it being a thing one puts on. Because one could just not, right? It'd be so easy. Why all this hubbub about people getting access to therapies or not? Why all of these people who are self-harming when they don't get access to this? Obviously, the solution is they care about it too much, so we just need to make them not care about it so much. Just say it's not a big deal. It's not. Just chill. It's okay. It doesn't matter. No, nobody really cares. It's okay.
A gendered sense of self is built by
okay, at least you don't. Some things you gotta evaluate in your head before you post them. Okay.
Sincerely internalizing and enacting gendered roles. This is sincerity. In sincerity, gender identity typically does.
See, here's the problem. This is why I know he hasn't read it, because he's not going to address Butler here.
Sincerely internalizing and enacting gendered roles. This is sincerity.
Internalizing. Like what? Internalizing. What are you talking about? What does that mean to internalize gender roles? You are raised in gender roles. You are raised through gender roles. The state treats you differently based on your assigned gender identity, based on your assigned sex identity, and these are the same. And there's just no engagement with this. The problem with sincerity is that the notion of sincerity requires there to be parity between, for example, some pure correct notion of the inside versus the outside, which is incorrect. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. Somebody can lie about their constitution. Like Lauren Southern, for example, changed her legal identity to man to troll feminists, who would then try to be polite, and then she'd laugh at them, go, "Oh, look at these stupid people. Look how dumb they are. Look how silly they are." But that's not what Hans is talking about when he's talking about sincerity versus insincerity. What he's talking about is trenders. That's what he's talking about.
Sincerity, gender identity typically doesn't mean to abstractly identify as a man or a woman. People tend to embed their gender identity in their roles.
Yeah, okay. There we go. There it is. Yeah, so if you're just people embed their gender. Sorry, I need to hear that one more time. That was such a badly phrased sentence.
Typically doesn't mean to abstractly identify as a man or a woman. People tend to embed their gender identity in their roles.
They embed their gender identity in their roles. So just so you know, if you're a trans woman in a manly profession, tough luck. Sucks to be a male flight attendant, though, doesn't it?
They identify more concretely, for instance, as the son of so-and-so or the wife of so-and-so.
How's that? That is abstract, though, Hans. That's relating to genealogy. That's abstract.
In sincerity, third genders are also role-based. In Thailand, for instance, there are katoi, sometimes called ladyboys. Not everyone can become a katoi. It's basically a role for gay feminine men only. And katois typically fulfill specific roles in society, for instance as performers in entertainment, religious practices, or the sex industry.
Sex slaves, yeah.
Authenticity is a tricky identity technology, sandwiched between sincerity and profilicity.
Oh my god. Oh my god, man.
It was born as the revolt against sincerity. Applied to gender, this means the revolt against identifying with gendered roles. Authenticity means finding identity not in roles, but in the pursuit of originality.
No, it doesn't.
Unique identity can only be found or created somehow within, behind the mask of the gendered persona. Philosophically, the representative of an authentic attitude towards gender.
I hate when these people say philosophically. It's like super duperly. Like, this does not mean anything. Philosophically, this does not mean anything. Philosophy is just discourse with an orientation towards particular types of concept creation and critique. It has nothing to do whatsoever. It's not like a special magical field where, oh, the stuff we say here, this is medically speaking. It's like, no, stop it. Stop it. It's because morons will listen to this and they'll go, oh, he's speaking philosophically. Okay. Turn my brain off. That's the thing. You see, turn your brain off. I am being spoken to by an expert. I will just absorb this like it's from a priest.
De Beauvoir. For her, social roles, female and male alike, obstruct authenticity. We must liberate ourselves from them to become.
Like, he's gone from Butler to Beauvoir, and he's just gone immediately to, oh, we need to liberate ourselves from roles to live authentically. It's like, he hasn't read Butler. Butler is a critic of Beauvoir. That's one of the first things Butler does. Butler is critical of Beauvoir because Beauvoir accepts the underlying sex differences as like, strictly speaking, like fixed categories. That's why Butler had to write that. Because feminists around when Butler was writing were assuming that there was a fixed naturalness and a sort of a primariness to sex identities that made them more, the sex categories to sexed bodies that made them more fixed and permanent and philosophically valid than gender identities were, or gender roles were, which were assigned culturally. But Hans isn't concerned about that, even though that's the most important thing. That's actually what everybody who has been engaging with Butler since Butler wrote has been specifically focused on.
Autonomous. To shed identification with gendered roles, such as son or wife, does not mean to abstractly identify as man or woman. It meant for de Beauvoir to identify as the concrete individual everyone is, regardless of their gender. In authenticity, we see one another and ourselves as unique.
Exactly. Philosophically, biblically, ultimately.
Individuals, no longer defined by generic gender, because it's impossible to find originality in it. For de Beauvoir, the liberation from gender roles did not mean to question biological sex.
Exactly, which is the problem, Hans. Which is why passing over Butler here, and this is the part that really bugs me, a whole lot of people are doing this. A whole lot of gender critical authors right now who are really bad philosophically, like really bad. A whole lot of them have been lately covering Butler as a name, but not actually engaging with anything they said. So it's like, they'll bring up Butler, they'll strawman Butler, and they'll move on to easier targets that they can misconstrue more easily, because Butler's not a bad writer. Butler's a very good writer. Butler writes very densely. But if you actually pay attention when you're reading, Butler is very intelligible, very actually easy to understand. Because they spell it out. They spell it out for you pretty carefully.
Our bodies have a sex, but...
No, your bodies don't have a sex. Your bodies don't have a sex. Strictly speaking, your bodies don't have anything, Hans. Because to have something is an imposition of some kind of propriety or some kind of, I mean, literally propriety, but it's some kind of, like, it's a social relation. Having is not a thing bodies do. Bodies don't have, bodies are. So what you would say is, this body is constituted of these, these capacities can be attributed to this body. There is a capacity to reproduce. Right? But the body doesn't possess the capacity to reproduce, as if the capacity to reproduce were something separate from it. This is something that happens when we talk about things in language, because we identify things through categories, and so we are left with the category, the thing being categorized, because there's not a perfect fit. It's like we talk about, Nietzsche talks about this in the, is it the genealogy? I keep forgetting if it's the genealogy of morals or the Twilight of the Idols. I think it's Twilight of the Idols. He talks about the lightning flashes. We talk about the lightning flashing. The lightning is the flash. However, because we talk about flashes and lightning as separate, because other things also have that impact on us, we experience an emanation from the phenomena we're trying to classify. We talk about flashes and lightning as separate kinds of things. Therefore, we talk about the lightning as if the lightning flashes. But there isn't, strictly speaking, a lightning and then a flash that is given off by it, right? Likewise, bodies don't have sexes. Bodies don't have reproductive capacities. And a description of a body includes its capacities, which are a part of it. It's not something the body has as something separate from it. This is simply how we talk about it, imagining a sort of baseline body that doesn't have these things.
As authentic individuals, we can become soulmates, not role mates, regardless of biological sex.
I hate that so much. That I just cringe deeply in my soul. Mate.
The semantics of authenticity had a great appeal to people born in the second half of the 20th century, like myself. My sense of self and my sense of gender is largely built with it.
Yeah, I can tell.
It is still the dominant social semantics. We use the vocabulary of authenticity in politics, in academia, in culture.
No, who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Who, where, when? What are you referring to?
But in practice,
You're just going to ignore that? Authenticity in academia tends to refer to whether or not, for example, you are being disingenuous, as in you are saying something that you don't actually believe, that you actively disbelieve in fact, in order to get past some kind of social barrier, or you are using some kind of tool to cheat on a test. Like, did you write this? Did you write this? Did you copy somebody else? Did AI copy it for you?
we have become prophilic. The enigma of gender tries to provide some clarity about this very confusing situation. Prophilicity means building a sense of self through the creation of profiles.
But your sense of self acts as a profile. The thing you're calling a sense of self already acts as a profile, Hans. What is a sense of self? We're just skirting over that? We're just assuming a sense of self is obvious? Like, what's wrong with you?
Like roles in sincerity, profiles in prophilicity are validated from the outside. In a profile, we see ourselves as we are seen by others.
You can't see yourself as you are seen by others. That's impossible.
Our peers. But, unlike in sincerity, these peers are not just the role mates whom we know closely and to whom we are related by birth or by convention. In prophilicity, we present ourselves to the general peer, a general audience we address. Let's say when we apply for a job or on social media, like I do now, or on a dating app. In prophilicity, gender identity becomes as important again as in sincerity.
He's gonna be we're gonna be pro if you're trans, you need to like broadcast, hey, I am super gay whenever you go onto Tinder. Okay, got it, Hans, that's it.
Both roles and profiles are typically gendered. However, unlike roles, profiles are seen as a matter of personal choice.
No, you're just describing oh my god, man. He. This is how I know he hasn't read any of this stuff. Because this is exactly what people engage with from Butler onwards. But long before then, actually. Because you can find this in Nietzsche. You can find this before Nietzsche. The idea that actually things are only... Things... Just man.
Dialectically, prophilicity combines the self-choice of authenticity
That's not how dialectics works.
with a focus on how one is seen by the peer as insincerity.
That's not how dialectics works.
This also applies big time to gender identity. An example is the treadwife. Here's how treadwife is defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. A dutiful housewife active on social media, and a young woman who chooses to be a homemaker and shares a lifestyle online. To get a better grasp of prophilic gender identity, the enigma of gender discusses transgender today in our post-sincere and post-authentic times.
You would never say it discusses transgender today. You would talk about how it discusses transgender identities. You would discuss how it talks about the transgender phenomenon if you want. You would talk about how it discusses transness. You talk about like concepts of gender today, full stop, period. You wouldn't just say the transgender. It's like saying the black. Like you don't say that. That's so dumb. 30 pages, man. You had to read 30 pages. That was too much for you.
One particularly curious case is the recent German law on the self-determination of gender. The explicit purpose of the law, as stated in the bill, is to empower individuals with the autonomous decision on the choice of gender. People need to make this supposedly autonomous decision.
Yeah, here we go. Now it comes out.
So that they can live in accordance with their sense gender. It's declared that gender identity largely determines, for instance, how a person is addressed and what expectations are in place regarding the outward appearance, the education, and behavior of a person. The big paradox here is that the law empowers people to self-determine how they are determined by their gender.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, you can't self-determine that at all. It allows them to take steps in order to be perceived in a certain way to the best of their ability to be perceived as such. That's how it does. It doesn't allow you to determine how people determine you. That's silly. How would they do that? How would they even intend to do that's not a paradox, Hans. You're pointing to the limits of state authority and legislation as if it indicated something wrong with epistemology. That's weird.
In the way they live, dress, and are addressed by others. It empowers them to authentically decide in which they are non-authentic.
What?
Concretely, the law allows people to create how others must see them.
Hans, you are wearing clothes right now. The law already allows that. What?
They can decide on the gender entry in their ID once a year. And they can decide on the pronouns others must use when addressing them.
In a professional capacity, yes. Why would you have a problem with that?
To be clear, this makes sense in today's society.
But it doesn't in earlier societies? Okay.
But only because we've moved on from sincere and authentic conceptions of gender and now see gender as a profile.
What? Okay. Why do profiles matter, George? Why do people seek to change their gender profiles? Oh, because they already had them. They already had their sex/gender, often these two terms being used interchangeably, on their IDs given to them by the government as children. They were then put into schools, forced into bathrooms, forced into institutions, forced into segregated spaces based on that. Their parents treated them differently based on that. They were treated differently by dating partners, by parental figures, by friends and family, etc., based on that. That all already existed. That wasn't invented because they suddenly got the option to say, well, actually, you ranked me wrong here, and it's fucking me up. This guy's not a native English speaker. His misuse of definite articles in English is because of that. I got some news for you, William. This guy, of all people, is not suffering for lack of ability to read Nietzsche. Okay? No. If you're this guy could write to that capacity. This is obvious. I'm sorry. It is actually patently obvious. The reason why you would not say the transgender, okay, to be clear, is not because, especially in his capacity, because he's spoken more critically about other subjects. The reason why you would say the transgender is because he is referring to the transgender movement. He's talking about it as a monolith. You would be very particular as a critical philosopher to specify that you are not talking about sort of a transcendent subject that encompasses all these different things. You are talking about a social tendency, a social construct, a biological necessity even. You would be particular about the nature of the thing you were talking about, because that inflects how people read you. This guy wrote a book on this. You don't have the excuse of like, oh, I wrote a book on this, but I just refer, like, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Sorry, I'm not yelling at you. This is actually disgusting.
And yet, by desperately highlighting self-determination, the German law seems like an attempt of society to prove to itself that we can still be authentic and autonomous, when in practice we have become prophilic.
No, you idiot. You were prophilic before, when the state law required autonomous subjects to legitimate itself. You clown. You moron. Oh my God. The law requires autonomous subjects so it can relay responsibility for X, Y, and Z, including crimes, taxes, and all other sorts of information. That's how the state engages with people. The state creates profiles of people. It has done so for a very long time. It's kind of how it functions. This is not, you have not made this up, Hans. Prophilicity is state action. That's the result of people having to engage in particular codified ways that are legible to external authorities. That wasn't invented by trans people. That wasn't invented to ameliorate discrepancies in one's personal gender identity with the broader culture. That's how the state classifies people. And a big part of why they even allowed, for example, the distinction between gender identity and so on and so forth is twofold. A, because they stopped relying on those metrics in that particular way, because the population is so small of people who are actually like changing their gender on their legal forms. But also because they get your reproductive information anyways now, because it's all being sold to them by social media. Because you have, as somebody with like particular biological features, particular biological issues, and those things you will search for information about, those search inputs, that'll be collected and sold. That's why you get ads on different platforms for stuff that you clicked on your phone elsewhere.
The incoherent.
Maybe we can look at his earlier about genuine pretending on the philosophy of the Zhuangzi. I don't want to. I'm going to look at this one. But like, this topic, you do not do that with this topic. It's inexcusable.
Mixture between an emphasis on authenticity and an actual practice of prophilicity is very evident in the marketing of gender-affirming procedures to transgender people.
There we go. Yeah, who's providing those services, Hans?
Advertising tells them that in order to become truly authentic.
Where is this advertising? I'm sorry, I am in one of the most liberal countries on earth. When you go outside, you do not see signs saying, "Hey, walk in. We'll turn you into a dude." That's not a thing. That's a gym. That's how gyms advertise, Hans. That is not how gender clinics advertise. In fact, they kind of don't really. Like, that's not a thing. That's not a thing, Hans.
They need to modify their bodies so that they
Like, you're going to show any evidence of this? What are you talking about? Where are the big signs saying, hey, body modification, 50% off?
are seen by others in accordance with generic gender expectations. Look at this ad by ART Surgical addressing transgender and gender diverse individuals.
I'm sorry. What? This doesn't even resemble what you're talking about. This is the website he's looking at. Art Surgical provides gender-affirming care. This includes cosmetic and transgender surgeries for trans women, trans men, and non-binary people. By the way, just FYI, this will include mastectomies for people with oh shoot, what's that called? With gynecomastia. Gynecomastia, by the way. You can break down that word etymologically. You can figure out what it's saying. Sex is gender. It's saying you've got woman boobs.
ART Surgical addressing transgender and gender diverse individuals.
Okay, how is this advertising free body modifications in public? This is a website for a plastic surgeon. Yes, they sell that service. What is wrong with you? I'm sorry, what?
Your path.
That's not even an advertisement. That's the front page of the website. You have to find that website to begin with. You're already looking for a place called Art Surgical before you see that.
To your true identity begins here.
Yeah, I'm that's dumb. That's dumb, but also, like, I'm sorry, that's a website, George. That's a website. That's a website, Hans. Hans George? It's Hans George. Hans?
Your path to your true identity begins here. Our goal is to help you be authentic and true.
Like, is this even a public... Is Art Surgical? Is that even like a... That's a private practice, isn't it? That's a private practice. Let's see. About art. Welcome to Art Surgical, founded by Dr. Angela Rodriguez. Our care center specializes in procedures for transgender and gender diverse individuals. Your path to your true identity begins here. Okay. This is a private practice. This is just one clinic. What is the argument here? This isn't a state clinic. This is in San Francisco. This is one doctor's practice. You found one person. Like, what? Your basis for saying this is how society is talking about gender is because you found a website from a doctor. A doctor. This is one person. Our staff. The Art Surgical staff is key to our patient-focused approach. The team includes care experts who share Dr. Rodriguez's compassion. We give you personalized support, attention, and expertise to guide you through your experience. Dr. Rodriguez is a renowned gender-affirming surgeon in San Francisco. Do you know what I notice here in this description? There's no description of other gender surgeons, other gender-affirming surgeons in this thing, which means this is literally just one person's private practice. This is her nurses, and a secretary. That's what this is. Wow.
True to yourself. Using Michel Foucault's language, this looks like authenticity's biopolitical endgame.
Wow. Authenticity doesn't have a biopolitical endgame, you moron. What the hell? What? Is he gonna? He's not going to describe biopolitics, is he? He's not going to describe it. He's going to go right back to the Ethan Klein podcast.
Transgender people have been assigned a biopolitical task, proclaimed loudly in our laws and our commercials. They must get their gender identity right, so that society can continue to believe in the authenticity vocabulary that it likes to describe itself with. However, in reality, unlike the German law says, gender identity can never be self-determined.
Okay, why is that? Like, identity by itself always can be self-determined. It's identity. You've already involved the self there, and the actions by the self. So you're not talking about gender anymore. Now you're talking about self-perception and self-insert into a perceived gender system. That's not the same thing. But let's hear why, because I'm really curious about this guy's psychological take.
Masha Gessen says,
that I've always felt, and after a certain point was able to put words to it, that gender is something that happens between me and other people. It doesn't actually happen inside my body. It's what people see, what I want them to see.
I mean, you say it doesn't happen inside of your body, but you will literally be surgically altered by doctors based on their judgment as to which gender you approximate to more. And those classifications, by the way, will be based, among other things, on reproductive capacity. That's inside your body. That's inside your body big time.
What I feel when they see one thing and not the other thing. All of that is my gender.
gender isn't anyone's autonomous decision.
I don't think that's not what the German law is saying. It's not saying it's someone's autonomous decision. It's saying how they express themselves and how they appear is their autonomous decision, which it is. Fuck you.
Gender happens, as Gessen says.
Well, no, it doesn't, though, because here's the problem. Here's the problem, Hans. Those gender roles, yeah, they were started by somebody. Yeah, they didn't come out of nature, Hans. We didn't evolve them. Women don't wear dresses because they evolved to, not need to run or have pockets. Women didn't cook historically because they evolved to be cooking creatures. They were put into a position by a society that allotted power to some people and didn't allot power to others, so that some were relegated essentially to a role of light slavery, or sometimes not so light slavery. That's where that comes from, Hans. So actually that was someone's autonomous decision. It was the autonomous decision of slave masters. You idiot.
That gender identity is what people see. And
Also, he isn't bringing up this takes place in a legal context. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is a legal context. You know what the law does? The law is to identify the subjects of the law. This has to do with how people as legal entities have to relate to each other as legal entities in the eyes of the state. That's what that's for. Yeah, exactly. Self-ID laws aren't saying you get to choose your gender. They're saying you get to choose how you're marked in this specific area. And by the way, that's really important because how you're marked in this specific area gains you access or excludes you from access to segregated spaces that are segregated by the state. This is one of the reasons why butch lesbians, there are videos of butch lesbians being removed from women's washrooms because some chuckle fuck saw a woman who didn't look super conforming in terms of their dress and assumed, oh, that's a man sneaking in. There was a comedian I saw recently which made a point that I brought up before. It's an obvious point, but it's like, imagine thinking that, oh, there's a bunch of men out there who want to sneak into women's washrooms and do terrible things to women, except it's illegal for them to go in there, so they don't. Like, if he's in China, the CCP are probably that's probably unlikely, Lisa.
what I want them to see. And especially so for transgender people under conditions of prophylicity, has also been made clear by ContraPoints.
You don't become a woman the first time you put on a dress. You become a woman the first time an older female relative turns to you at a restaurant and says, maybe you should order the salad, sweetie.
That's a joke, Hans. That's a joke. But also it's wrong, by the way. You don't not become a woman because an older woman doesn't fat shame you in public. What a weird argument to say for a philosopher. I hate people who watch this content. I genuinely do. These people are awful human beings. These are people who have no interest whatsoever in learning. They just like the idea of being the kind of person who watches philosophical content. I think it's one of the more disgusting types of person to become because you don't learn that way. You become you're basically just watching Vosh, but with a highbrow tag on it. And it's or Sargon, if you will. And it's awful. It's like nobody in here is like, oh, I'm so glad this book is finally oh, this is so smart. Nobody here cares. Because you would engage with a minimal amount of it if you did. And people who defend not engaging with a minimal amount of the content, like, screw you. How about you keep quiet if you don't want to think? Like, this is adult territory.
And
As Laura Jane Grace put it, you want them to see you like they see every other girl.
there is no gendered soul deep within any person.
But
Instead, A gendered sense of self is conditioned by a person's biology.
Okay, so that doesn't work, Hans, because you said, oh, there's no soul that is gendered. Instead, there is instead a person's mind that is gendered because of its relationship to its outside, which is biology. You've asserted the soul superstition by distinguishing mind from body. Boom, you clown.
Psychology. And, importantly, by identity technologies.
Wow. They're transing your kids, guys.
And by the relations with others that we shape with these identity technologies. In sincerity, gender identity lies in gendered roles. In authenticity, we want to relate to others as authentic soulmates regardless of our generic sex and gender.
There is no generic sex and gender. What? Generic sex and... What is generic gender then, Hans? What does that mean then? You've just said... I'm sorry.
In prophilicity, we create our gender identity in social validation feedback loops with our general peer. Gender identity is not individual.
You know, the funny thing is that everything that Carefree Wandering is discussing here doesn't actually describe trans people at all, but it does absolutely describe people who are hacks, who are not respected by their philosophical peers in academia, who instead attend to curate a profile of being a philosopher and an academic to a lay audience that has no understanding of what any of this means. Because that's what he's doing. Because nobody takes this ass clown seriously. Nobody takes this guy seriously. When was the last time you saw any, like, major philosopher actually acknowledge the existence of a Hans Georg Mueller or a Thomas Bogardus? They don't. They're a joke. They're a laughingstock. They're alone in little, like, creepy, culty universities that no academic actually goes to.
Individual, but relational. It's not a person's essence, but made with identity technologies. We're neither born with a gendered sense of self, nor can we choose it freely. We acquire it through practice.
No, you don't acquire it through practice. It is imposed upon you from birth. I'm sorry. I didn't have an interview process with my doctor when I was born. They just shortened certain organs and then sent me home with a Band-Aid. So I'm sorry. What are you talking about?
Through the way we live together with others. In this sense, it is played. It's pretended. And by pretending it, gender
It's pretended.
becomes a very deeply felt part of our sense of self.
Really? And it's not because when you go to the toy store as a child, the boys section is blue and has action heroes and space things. When you go to the girls section, it's a whole bunch of dolls of women in domestic activities. That's not why?
In this sense, it is perfectly genuine. People don't lie when they identify.
Like, I really can't... It's really difficult to, like, overemphasize how stupid this man is. This man thinks that there is no society until you come of age and you start engaging with the world on social media. This man literally thinks that you just go out there and, as like you're starting a video game and it's like, oh, you know, I just eventually ended up with this Balatro strategy. Like, the parents don't gender their kids. Parents don't send their kids to cooking classes or to sports based on their state assigned sex identity. Parents don't paint their kids' rooms colors different, or their kids' rooms different colors based on their state assigned sex identity. People aren't segregated into different spaces or different classes or different types of things based on state assigned sex identity, based upon religion assigned sex identity, based upon religious assigned roles, and so on and so forth. Based upon gender-oriented sexism, based upon gender-oriented cultures of crime and assault. Like, nobody does that. No, it's just, you just go out there and eventually you just kind of fit in somewhere or you don't, and it's that simple. Wow.
With their gender. We have a gendered sense of self, either through identification with gendered roles, through the curation of gender profiles, or somewhat paradoxically, as authentic individuals.
This guy's had plenty of teaching jobs, it seems. That's what happens when you work at a university. There's a lot of people have teaching jobs. A lot of people go to a lot of universities and are not taken seriously by their peers. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. William, are you in academia? Like, do you understand how this works? No offense. Like, I'm not trying to talk down to you, but like, this is not how this works. The fact that this guy is a PhD means he's been to universities and he's probably had teaching jobs. He probably had teaching jobs in his postdoc. He probably was just doing pretty basic, boring stuff back then. In fact, I know he was, because he started off doing, like, with an emphasis on Eastern philosophy, right? That AGP guy has some pretty impressive credentials, by the way. Ray Blanchard taught at a lot of places. Dr. Money, he's got a doctor in his name. He worked at a lot of places. There's a lot of really shitty, bad academics who get this. Are academics. Surprise. Bad academics are academics. Like, it's like, well, actually, this politician is taken very seriously by his peers. Look at how many posts he's had. Look at how many places he's worked. It's like, well, you mean this guy whose employability depends on his profile lists all of his assignments on his profile? You don't say.
To whom their gender seems generic, or through a combination of all of this. If we understand that gender identity, no matter which identity technologies we use, is always genuinely pretended.
Genuinely pretended. That is either a hilarious self-contradiction or he is... like, I'm sorry. No, it's never pretended, actually. It's never pretended. And you can't genuinely pretend. That's a contradiction in terms. Unless you mean it is genuinely a pretense, which is also wrong, because for it to be a pretense, it would have to be deliberate. If he's saying pretended in the form of performance, that's also wrong, because performances aren't pretended, they are enacted actually.
Gender identity, no matter which identity technologies we use, is always genuine.
There are no gender identity technologies, by the way. That's not a thing. Genuine Pretending is the title of one of his earlier books. Well, I can tell from this that it's not a very good book, because this is nonsense.
Pretended. We might be able to relax about it.
Why? Why would you be able to relax about it? That's actually the exact reason why nobody is relaxed about it, Hans. That's the reason why nobody is relaxed about it. Do you know how many atheists there are within the Christian nationalist ranks? Oh, there's a lot of them. They've decided, though, in their infinite wisdom, that enforcing Christian religion is good for society. People are fine with all of this being social constructs, but they're still fascists. I think he's conversing with a body of Eastern philosophy and possibly modern Chinese philosophy, which is being referenced here. I don't see how or why he would do that. He's engaging with philosophers of gender right now. That's what his book is in the genre of. That's who he's critiquing. I don't know why he would be inserting that in this way. You think it's done partially because you don't get the references? William, can you call in? I'm not gonna fight you. I just want to hear the explanation directly, because I'm not understanding your logic, and I'd like to hear it if you would. If you're up for it. Again, I'm not angry at you. I don't get the references either. That's what it feels like. Okay, fine. Look, don't give people like this the benefit of the doubt. It's their job to explain to you. That's what they're doing. This guy is entering into an arena where an entire classification of person is being actively persecuted across continents, and he's adding to the feeding frenzy. You do not have the right to be opaque when you do that. You do not have the right to be vague when you are doing that and get away with it out of generosity. Genuinely, fuck this guy.
We might become less obsessed with trying to fit certain gender roles, or with shedding our gender roles to find the true self behind them.
Like this guy is a prick. He has no idea what he's talking about. The only reason why he is making this video is that a whole lot of people who just hate trans people can go, look, there's a philosophy professor who agrees with me. That's it. That's it. You know what I notice? He got his picture of gender trouble from Google, because this cover is from the first edition. This is the first edition of the book. That's not what it looks like right now. Where is my copy? My copy's somewhere. Did I put it on the shelf? Oh, it's over here. Hang on. I like the original cover better, honestly, but this is what it looks like now. Now, why does this matter? Well, if you go into the notes, you will notice that Judith Butler in this book, Gender Trouble, has footnotes referencing Bodies That Matter, another one of their books. Bodies That Matter was published after Gender Trouble. Oh, that's strange. Is Judith Butler a time traveler like Charlie Kirk? No, I don't think so. This is the second edition of the book. It was revised in the light of later arguments had stuff added to it. It had an introduction that wasn't in the original edition of the book. This book was published when Hans Mueller was not interested in feminism, or in gender as a topic. He did not read this book. He got a copy of he put a book cover that he found on Google, and he picked the one that looked cool because he hasn't read this book. These are not the same book. These are different books. I don't think it's dumb because I don't get the references. I think it's dumb because it is hand waving away the actual, like, philosophically important subject matter in order to insert his own lingo, because he's trying to sell a product to people who don't know philosophy, and not to teach them, to exploit their ignorance, actually.
With trying to fit certain gender roles, or with shedding our gender roles to find the true self behind them.
Let me read. Shedding our gender roles to find the true self behind them, okay? Gender is not a noun, but neither is it a set of free-floating attributes, for we have seen that the substantive effect of gender is performatively produced and compelled by the regulatory practices of gender coherence. Hence, within the inherited discourse of the metaphysics of substance, gender proves to be performative, that is, constituting the identity it is purported to be. Now, what does this mean? The metaphysics of substance. Gender is not a thing that a body has or is comprised of. Gender is an activity among bodies in a monistic system. There is no nature and then something above it that characterizes or classifies or attributes nature. There is simply stuff. And then that stuff engages in activities that also involve relations with parts of itself, right? Language is spoken. There is a literal organic structure that is doing thinking, that is doing speaking, that is making noises that are then codified between relations between thinking, speaking parts of stuff, right? What page? 34. And so Butler continues. In this sense, gender is always a doing, though not a doing by a subject who might be said to pre-exist the deed. There is no self that does gender. Gender is, again, activity conditioned in our discourse by its relation to an ecosystem of activity. The challenge for rethinking gender categories outside of the metaphysics of substance will have to consider the relevance of Nietzsche's claim On the Genealogy of Morals that, quote, there is no being behind doing, affecting, becoming. The doer is merely a fiction added to the deed. The deed is everything, unquote. In an application that Nietzsche himself would not have anticipated nor condoned, I actually don't necessarily agree with this sentence by Butler. We might state as a corollary, there is no gender identity behind the expressions of gender. That identity is performatively constituted by the very expressions that are said to be its results. There is no true self that is being sought by the performance of gender identity. Gender identity is the performance. There's no capacity for authenticity because there is no true gender self. The authentic, inauthentic distinction in this case is wrong because the very categories of man and woman, indeed the notion of sexed bodies themselves, are impositions culturally by a political economy that relegates some bodies of some crude description to these tasks and frees these other ones to do these other more desirable tasks. That's it. And Butler is acutely aware of this. Butler references all of this stuff. Everybody, every feminist philosopher in this milieu references this stuff. That's the angle. It's the ignoble origins, the shameful origins of our concepts and categories and thoughts, following Nietzsche. I need to thank Imran for alerting me to that phrasing.
Or with the attempt to create a high-profile gender identity. The point is not to get one's gender right, but to be at ease with it as much as possible.
Okay, but you don't have a gender, Hans. Being at ease with your gender means not behaving in ways that actively discomfort you. And for trans people, acting in ways that the state classifies them and allowing themselves to be treated in ways that the state classifies them in accordance and oriented around the way the state classifies them is deeply discomforting. It is, in fact, the source of the unease, or a major part of it. So this is useless, actually. Hey, Sunday, could I join and say something? Be my guest. Hey. What's up?
Hello. All right, just had a pause. I just wanted to say, it like genuinely doesn't matter whether or not, to me at least, whether or not a Carefree wandering is being 100% genuine. Maybe he's trying his absolute best.
Mm-hmm.
He like has jumped over so much that I don't know how. It is his job to he's either a grifter or he's doing his job poorly, and either one's unacceptable.
I agree.
Like if you want, especially if you want to bring up stuff like credentials, it is expected.
That's the thing. It's like people will use credentials as like a sign of authority, but it's not. You use credentials to justify your position relative to an institution because you have proved that you have gone through some like set of procedures that establish to a certain degree of confidence that you can be expected to adhere to certain standards. That's the purpose of credentials. It's telling institutions that you've done X, Y, and Z, so we can expect you to perform X, Y, and Z to this standard if, for example, you are grading papers, teaching students, writing as a representative of our university to like a journal or something like that. It has nothing whatsoever to do with whether or not what you are saying is true to a lay audience that can't tell the difference.
Yeah, it's also he hasn't really explained any of the ideas he's discussed like at all. Latour, in one of his papers, you read it on stream, at least a little bit of it. One of the things he talks about in it,
the door
is,
one, right?
Yeah,
the door stop one,
he kind of jests in the beginning about how you're totally free to go on,
yes.
But that's for a play he's making on later,
yes.
Because you actually aren't free to go on, not really. And he explains it, and he does it, and he actually goes through an explanation of this while also explaining a whole bunch of other things. It's because it's not just about that, but like it's just like explanation is not just saying an idea. Explanation actually requires you to show your work.
Well, you have to make it intelligible so that other people can understand how you got to your reasoning. So, like, for example, it's not enough for me to say to explain Butler. Butler regards gender as a performance, but this other person regards it. I need to tell you what that means. I need to say, oh, well, Butler is taking a stance, and following from Nietzsche, that when we talk about identities or talk about behaviors as things that are separate from the things that are doing the behaving or identifying as, I guess, we are actually artificially creating the fiction of a separate layer of existence that literally is not there except in our lingo. It is literally the fact that we are talking about it that is creating the impression that there's a separate domain of activity. This is, by the way, the same critique that people have made across the board of Descartes, where it's like, I think, therefore I am. That's literally, you're basing your ontology off of grammar. It's actually kind of silly when you think about it for 5 seconds. But that's the move. So when Butler's talking about a performance, Butler is not talking about someone who wears a mask. Butler is denying the distinction between the mask and the actor. And if you don't understand that, like when you say Butler thinks gender is a performance, you are going to think that gender is drag, which it's not. Drag is playing with gender. It's different. Anyways, sorry, as you were saying.
No, yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just, there is in my mind no need to read him any more charitably than simply saying,
I would not regard him as, I would not read him any more charitably than I would read someone like Garepi. Like, he's basically just a bigot writing for bigots at this point. And I don't care how I don't care how sincere he was calculating the number of cookies baked. Okay, I don't care how sincerely he was doing that. The project by itself is disgraceful. So
it's also just like, it's like I said, it's just like, either way he's doing a bad job. There are people who, like, I don't know, have heinous beliefs, and they can actually, like, lay them out in a coherent way.
Mm-hmm.
And he just hasn't done that.
Nope.
He has just leaped from, like, he brought up the German thing, and I don't understand why, and I don't understand how or why he thinks that. He says because of the language, but why because of the language? I'm not really sure.
Well, I can tell you why, and I understand where William's coming from there, so I don't want to bully William, because I get the point, which is that you can expect that when someone, for example, is talking about something, when there's a language barrier, they might speak a little bit crudely about X, Y, and Z. They might not, like, it might seem a little bit strange in their lingo. Zizek gets away with this a lot. But, like, here's the thing. When you're engaging with someone like Judith Butler, and you have to be engaging with someone like Judith Butler if you're talking about the ontology of gender, which he absolutely is. When you're engaging with people like Foster Sterling or Sally Hasling or any of these like actual philosophers, as a philosopher, you need to read them. And one of the things that happens when you read them is the idea of transgender as a singularity in any capacity. First of all, not a topic of this book. Butler doesn't actually talk about that. But secondly, when you are talking about the transgender or the rise of transgender as like, what do you mean? Do you mean as a medical practice? Do you mean as a cultural fiction? Do you mean as a social movement? Do you mean as a broad classification of people who happen to, not be easily sorted into these state-imposed categories? Like, any number of these things. The fact that you're not disambiguating this. This, by the way, is not a thing that is unique to English. You have to disambiguate this in German philosophy, too. You have to do this in all philosophy. That's how you do philosophy. Nobody has, like, Plato understood not to do this. That's what early philosophy was. It was specifying your categories. What is included? What is excluded? Why? So we know what the hell we're talking about. The fact that he's allowing this to just fly, so his audience has no idea what the actual target is, so they're free to fill in the blanks. It's actually the exact same thing as when Dr. Anna talks about BPD women and narcissists without actually specifying, hey, by the way, these are clinical designations based on a past behavior as observed and recorded and considered by a trained doctor. These are not a basis for you to determine how you treat strangers in your day-to-day or how you treat family members in your day-to-day based on your personal diagnosis that, oh, they're exhibiting narcissistic traits. I know, I watch a doctor on YouTube. Like, that's not how that works. And the fact that she allows people to, like, do that is actually incredibly pernicious. The fact that he is allowing people to basically fill in the blanks and be totally dismissive of philosophy of gender. The actual nuances, as you pointed out helpfully, of, you know, like, the difference between a state putting down, like, laws and regulations about how people as autonomous subjects, which they are classified by as by the state in order for the state to be able to engage with them as individuals, like, the fact that that is not being distinguished from gender as it is treated in philosophy, gender as it is discussed in day-to-day language, gender as it is enacted in social relations. Like, the fact that none of these things are being clarified, it's literally just putting fuel on the fire of a feeding frenzy of bigots on a population of people that are being targeted by states right now. It's the most disgusting thing you can do, which is one of the reasons why nobody will read his book and he's going to disappear in total anonymity because he's a loser. And that's something else, by the way. Sorry, I'm going to end my rant here. Philosophers, quote unquote, who can't address their peers, who have to go directly to a lay audience because their peers won't engage them, are losers. Oh yeah, JFG was in the Epstein files, wasn't he? Greppy was in the Epstein. That's funny. Although this was, to be fair, it wasn't. It was known for a while. He received money from Epstein years and years ago. He would joke about that. The real scandal is where's his wife. But anyways, sorry, Envy. I ranted.
No, you're fine. It's also just he didn't even bother trying to explain. He said gender was 3 things: biological, psychological, and a third thing I forget off the top of my head. But he didn't explain what those are and what the difference between them is, or didn't even try to define.
If there is one. Yeah. Because like that's the thing that really bugs me is like all of these categories that he's just using without justifying it. Like just, oh, you have a biological sense. Oh, there is psychology. Oh, there is a sense of self. All this stuff. Guess what? Guess what things gender trouble is all about. It's how gender constitutes your sense of self. The illusion of a sense of self, for example. The category of the self as something distinct from the rest of you. Obviously, Butler's not saying we don't exist. Butler is saying the way in which we think we exist is obviously downstream from a whole lot of other practices, because language is practice. And language is practice following from practicality. We use language to describe and to do and to engage with stuff that we do to live and to do the things we want to do, or the things that we are given as available to do. And so therefore, our language reifies the stuff that we do, which includes how we classify and relegate people. Which includes, by the way, how we self-describe our constitution. Hence, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. You're literally describing the ontology of everything by reference to the way in which our sentences are structured in Latin. By implication, by the way, because the I's not even actually there. So it's like, dude, your one job as a philosophy professor, as someone who is like talking to the public, educating the public on philosophy, is to actually have read the philosophy first. And it's very obvious that he hasn't, because there are arguments that you could make against Butler. I don't think they're very good, but they'd be more compelling than just not making them. Like, for example, you could take the angle of someone that we've actually been reading in the server. You could take the angle of someone like Elizabeth Gross, who is like, who actually sort of emphasizes like the imposition of like certain like biological factors on life experience and so on, which I don't think is something that Butler is aloof to, but it's also like, that's an angle you could take. It's an important angle because like certain kinds of things, like for example, if you're born with one arm, it's going to inflect very massively how you engage just in day-to-day life. Now, what will also inflect you very massively how you engage with day-to-day life is how your society engages with you as a consequence of you having one arm. Which is where Butler comes back in, because I don't think Butler's that naive. But like, that's an angle you could take. That'd be like one thing. It's like where it's like, oh, well, like, you know, here we got Foster Sterling. Foster Sterling's pointing out that There are no fixed sexes. It's actually like a whole sequence, even just in terms to get like external structures, like visible structures to a doctor. Leaving aside all of like the stuff with like chromosomes and whatnot. You need these particular relationships between receptibility of certain hormones, generation of certain hormones in certain quantities, like mechanical proximity, and so on and so forth. Like there are all these different things. But, you know, people with certain structures do have experiences that, you know, are predicated on having those structures. And you could make that move. That would be a move where it's like, okay, this is a thing that philosophers have to reckon with, and they do. He doesn't even do that. He just takes it as given. Oh, there's just biological sex. We are just given the biological sex we are born, and we develop gender as we engage with the world and find ourselves. It's like, are you actually brain damaged? Doctors say it's a girl or a boy before they come out of the womb. Like, what is wrong with you? Sorry.
No, it's even fucking people like Penn and Teller engage with stuff like that. There was a person who came on and he didn't have hands.
Oh, hang on one sec.
But he still.
One sec. The I is there. No, the I isn't there. It's cogito ergo sum. It's there is no I in there. Sorry.
That's a doubt.
I was just gonna say, there's this show where I don't. You guys can don't fool us. It's like a thing. There's this guy that came on. He didn't have any hands, and he does a show for them, and they're trying to figure out how these people are doing it, and if they can't, they like the person wins. And one of the things they bring up is they kind of don't even know. There's kind of a confusion at first because like everything to do with magic involves you having hands, like in like the typical books. It is like there's no magic books for people without hands. Like the guy had to figure things out how to do
Here,
magic.
One second, very quickly, I apologize.
Magic himself.
William says there is an I, it is embedded as the conjugation of the verbs. That is how Latin works. That's my point. Thank you, William. Sorry, continue.
And like just like magicians for like a little silly show.
Yeah.
Like engage with stuff like that. And it's like and he doesn't. And it's like him being an academic makes that even worse. It makes it even worse, like for me. It's like, okay, well, all right, you have a PhD, good for you. Especially if he has a teaching job. If he has a teaching job, I
would love to sit in on this guy's lecture on this topic. I would love that so much. I'd have to go to Macau though. I don't want to, but I would love to see this guy teach this stuff because, like, oh my god, I don't think he owns any of the books that he's mentioned in this conversation either. I legitimately don't think he bothers to look into any of this. Because it's like he's using an outdated edition of the book, which is funny to me. Because one of the reasons for the second edition is because Butler was widely misunderstood by a bunch of people because they read them badly, and so Bodies That Matter came out. Butler elaborated a lot on their ontology, and then came back with a revised version of Gender Trouble in like 1999 or something, 2000. 1999. Yeah. Well,
even that non-binary person that he was citing, the arguments he made didn't follow from what they said, like literally at all.
Yeah.
It actually is totally compatible with everything that was put up. Even like the little marketing thing, you can be your true identity. Well, we can just say that means that, society treats you this way, but you're not actually that way. And something like that, you can like reconcile that. Like all they were saying was, I didn't choose to be that way. And the marketing things from
you just have to ask. All you have to ask to make this all fall apart is like, hey, so why do people stay in the closet?
Yeah. Why
do people stay in the closet, Hans? What does that mean? Like, because if, for example, there are material disadvantages to coming out as trans, and so people stay in the closet as their assigned gender at birth, then obviously prophylicity doesn't actually account for this. Because you're assuming that prophylicity, that the profile is its own reward. But very clearly it's not. Because people hide their identity because there are material consequences and social consequences of a very grave nature to being out of the closet and having that profile.
It's actually even worse because people will go back into the closet.
Yeah.
People will stop their transition even though they want to transition. They want to do
this. You know what happens. You know what happens if you're. You know what happens if you're a very feminine sounding man with a very, because there's I'm not going to point out anyone in particular, but there's I think it's got to be he had to be in his 40s when I was watching. There's a guy who had videos on some philosophers, and I listened to him passively because he came on in my playlist, and very much a cis man, but he had his voice sounded like almost like I'm trying to think of an example. Who did he sound like? It was like, oh shoot, what is her name? This is gonna drive me crazy. Listen. Sounded very much like a cis woman. He was not going for that. And it's like, this person will be bullied for having that voice. But if this person transitioned, this person would be bullied for having that face. So it's like, okay. It's just wild to me. Like, there's just none of this indicate the fact I don't believe did he write this book 2 years ago? I guess that would make sense because he was going after philosophy tube then. But it's very obvious this guy was always just flatly a transphobe and he wanted to get in on the action, but he was too much of a coward to do it. That's it. Who's even publishing this thing? Hang on. Columbia. The Enigma of Gender. Hang on. I know Routledge published Thomas Bogardus' book. I think there must be a lot of money going into getting this stuff under the radar. Published by Columbia University Press. Dear God. I've been noticing this a lot with academic writing over the last year in particular. There's been a lot of really low quality stuff that's being published by mainline academic publishers, and I think there's a lot of money, and I think there's been a lot of personnel moved around, so the people who are making the decisions are different recently.
Yeah.
There's a hardcover of this for $200. What? What the hell?
Also, I just want to say, I don't think getting references is enough to explain it.
Yes.
There's times I don't get references to things,
yeah.
and there's a difference between not getting a reference and you're not thinking it's following. So you don't get a reference. It's not usually that it doesn't follow for you. It's that you're just not really sure. You're just kind of uncertain. Yeah, you just. I guess that's how it is for me, at least. And throughout this, I'm just he didn't say anything. He didn't tell me anything. He used words at me.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Someone's been waiting in the wrong waiting room. What? You have to go into the patron waiting room, Warren. I don't see you in the regular waiting room. You have the patron role. You can just go there. Big goofball.
Taoist approach to gender identity.
Wait, sorry, he's just said a Taoist person. 1 second.
Identity. The point is not to get one's gender right, but to be at ease with it as much as possible. That's a Taoist approach to gender identity.
Oh my god. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay. He just said that the point is to be at ease with your gender identity. That is a Taoist approach to gender identity.
I just heard that. This guy is
Oh, you're cutting out there big time, Warren. No, you're not cutting out. I'm just hearing myself.
yeah, he said that. Well, I mean, this guy is a professor of Chinese philosophy.
Yeah. So he should know better than to know
Chinese philosophy.
He should know better than to think that
anything else.
Well, but hang on. So he's like he's a professor of Chinese philosophy, right? The Tao is not about being chill with stuff. That's not what Taoism is.
Well, he translated the entire Tao Te Ching, actually.
I know, which is like, it's kind of impressive. Although, to be fair, as I was talking about earlier,
2007.
Like, yeah, but Walter Kaufmann, to be fair, also translated Nietzsche, and he like said it in a footnote that, oh, ressentiment is just resentment. It's like, no, those don't mean the same thing. It means the same thing in a French dictionary, but in Nietzsche, he's doing this whole like thing about the way in which frustrated energy is redirected into sort of what we might like consider to be like sort of a virtual realm, in order to be vented without like destroying the subject, right? That's like that's ressentiment. It's about like, oh, you can't enact, you can't vent your energy, as all animals need to do, because you're weaker than other parties who are preventing you from venting your energy as you like to do. Therefore, you sublimate it to this higher level, quote unquote, where you go, oh, I may not be strong enough to beat you, but I am smarter than you and more refined and more complex and all of this stuff. That's not even necessarily a bad thing. It produces like tremendous amounts of like new powers that you wouldn't have otherwise. But like that's ressentiment. It's not just like feeling aggrieved because somebody else hurt you. With this, it's like, oh, we just need to be okay with our gender identity. That's the Taoist approach. It's like there are people who are tyrants who are immune to the negative consequences of their actions personally, who destroy things and ruin things and are incredibly like constantly like suffering and so on and so forth, but are perfectly comfortable with their gender identity as ruler of the known world. That's not Taoist.
So I guess my analysis of this is that he's doing something incredibly cynical, which is to say that he has had a successful career working with Chinese philosophy, lecturing on Chinese philosophy. He has all these books about Chinese philosophy, or on his particular philosophy, which is conversant with Chinese philosophy. But now this hot new topic comes about, and he decides, okay, I need to publish something on this topic.
Oh, I 100% agree. And Thomas Bogardus did the same thing too. Like he has no background in actually like understanding any of this stuff. He doesn't engage with it except at the most surface level, and he name drops like, and I can't use this language on YouTube, but like it's obvious. It's kind of obvious. It's one of those things too where it's like you kind of have to like know what it is to do philosophy to recognize it a little bit. Which is one of the reasons why people like this get away with it, because the audience has no concept of like what it actually is to do philosophy. I think that might actually, I just realized that book up here, upper left corner. See that blue one? See where that purple plant goes? It sort of points to the tip to this one here. I think I know what book that is. Hang on, hold that thought on my earphones in. I need to confirm. I think I'm right. Oh my god, I think I'm right. I think I clocked it correctly. Look at this. Zone Books, The Propensity of Things by Francois Julien toward a history of efficacy in China. Is that? I think that's it. I think that's the book.
It is.
I think that's it. I think that's it right up here. Right up here. I think
so then the other thing I wanted to say is that this guy is oddly he's conversant with a guy named Luhmann. Luhmann. Who is that? I have no idea.
I have no idea.
He has like several books about Luhmann, the philosophy of Luhmann, some German philosopher I've never heard of.
Weird. I'll look into it. I gotta wrap up. My voice is going.
Okay.
I'm gonna finish this last minute and then I'll give a final word. Thanks for calling in, Warren.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
We can wake up authentically in the morning, create our gender profiles during the day, and be a sincere daughter or father in the evening, without obsessing about any of these identities.
Well, unless society obsesses about them and pushes back on you being authentic, Hans.
As Masha Gessen says.
What if we just agree to be playful and...
This is so dumb. This is like when Morgan Freeman was like, just don't talk about race. Just don't talk about it. It'll go away. Don't talk about it. It's like, well, no, clearly not. Because they're going to talk about it whether or not you do. Don't like apartheid? Just don't talk about it.
Have fun with the one life each of us is given.
Like, yeah, I'm sure if... I don't understand why people are so serious about, you know, like the HIV epidemic. You just need to inject yourself with all of your cash. It's that simple.
If you're interested in the book, please check the description of this video. There you'll also find a code for getting a discount if you get the book through the Columbia University Press website.
I'm going to get it online. Hey everyone, have a good night. Thanks for joining. I think I'm actually going to put this last segment onto President Sunday Dark, so there will be a clip of this soon, because I think it's... I want to hammer this guy. So I'm gonna have there'll be a fireside chat going over this in a bit more structure. And this clip will probably be on President Sunday Dark in the next couple of days or so. But of course, you already have access to this. I think we're going to start doing more streams on YouTube for Patreon, simply because we found, like with exceptions, like sometimes we want to do like the like we want to do stuff where we're looking at media that, you know, YouTube might be a bit more sensitive to. We might do it on Patreon, but generally speaking, there's a lot less latency, so we're going to do them here. Thanks everybody, and thank you for being patient with the slow output of, you know, Patreon content the last little while. I've been really sick, and I've been like just figuring out a balance, and we're getting there. I think we basically found it with this new schedule. It sucks that I got sick the exact week we initiated it, but is what it is. Okay, I'm trying. I'm going to send you over to who's live right now.